The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Dr. Lisa Martinez kept sipping it anyway. She sat in the dim control room of the Jupiter Communications Station, watching endless streams of data flow across her screens. Space was mostly quiet tonight. Just the usual background noise from distant stars and the occasional chatter from mining ships in the asteroid belt. Lisa rubbed her tired eyes and checked the time. 3 in the morning, station time. Her shift would end in 4 hours, and she looked forward to her bed. She had been monitoring deep space signals for 12 years now, and most nights were exactly like this one. Boring. Peaceful. Empty. That changed at 3:17 a.m. A soft beep made her look up from her reports. One of the long-range receivers had picked up something unusual. The signal was weak, barely stronger than cosmic background radiation, but it had a pattern. Lisa leaned forward and adjusted the settings, trying to clean up the interference. "What are you?" she whispered to herself, watching the strange signal pulse across her screen. The pattern was definitely artificial. Not a pulsar, not a quasar, not any natural phenomenon she knew. This was made by someone. Something. Lisa felt her heart start beating faster. In 12 years of monitoring space, she had never seen anything like this. She reached for her communicator. "Ryan, are you awake?" "Ryan," Blake answered after a few seconds, his voice thick with sleep. "Lisa, it's 3 in the morning. What's wrong?" "I need you in the control room now, and call Dr. Murphy too." "Is there an emergency? Are we under attack?" Lisa stared at the signal, still pulsing weakly on her screen. "I don't know what this is, but you need to see it." 20 minutes later, Ryan arrived in the control room, followed by Dr. Kevin Murphy. Ryan was the station's best communication specialist, while Kevin was their expert in languages and codes. If anyone could make sense of this signal, it would be these two. "Show me what you found," Ryan said, settling into the chair next to Lisa. She pointed at her screen. "It started about 20 minutes ago. The signal is coming from the direction of Kepler 442, over 1,200 light-years away. Look at the pattern." Ryan studied the data for several minutes, his frown growing deeper. "This isn't random noise. There's definitely a structure here." "Kevin, what do you think?" Dr. Murphy adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to the screen. "It looks like some kind of mathematical sequence. See these repeating elements? They're trying to establish a baseline for communication." "Communication?" Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "You mean this is a message?" "I think so," Kevin said quietly. "Someone is trying to talk to us." The 3 scientists spent the next 6 hours working on the signal. Ryan used the station's most powerful computers to clean up the interference and boost the weak transmission. Kevin worked on breaking down the mathematical patterns, looking for any clues about the language or meaning behind the message. As the hours passed, pieces began to fall into place. The signal used prime numbers to establish basic mathematical concepts, then built more complex ideas on top of that foundation. It was brilliant and simple at the same time. "I think I've got something," Kevin said as the sun began to rise outside the station windows. "The message has 3 main parts. The first part is about location. They're giving us coordinates for their solar system. The second part seems to be about time. Something is happening quickly." "And the third part?" Lisa asked. Kevin looked troubled. "The third part is harder to translate, but I think it's a request. Or maybe a plea." Ryan had been working on a different angle, trying to extract more information from the signal itself. "I've been analyzing the transmission method," he said. "Whoever sent this used an enormous amount of energy. This signal has been traveling through space for over 1,200 years. 1,200 years? Lisa couldn't hide her amazement. "This message is older than our oldest cities." "That's not the strange part," Ryan continued. "The strange part is that they aimed it perfectly. This signal was sent directly at our solar system as if they knew we would be here." Dr. Murphy finished his latest translation attempt and turned to face the others. His expression was grim. "I think I understand more of the message now. They're not just trying to communicate. They're asking for help." Lisa felt her stomach drop. Help with what? Kevin pointed at his translation notes. Their sun is dying. Not slowly, like stars usually do, but quickly. Something is wrong with their solar system and they don't have much time left. How much time? Based on what I can translate, maybe a few decades, maybe less. The three scientists sat in silence, staring at the weak signal still pulsing on their screens. Somewhere over 1,000 light-years away, an entire civilization was facing extinction. And they had sent out this desperate message hoping someone would hear it and care enough to help. There's more, Kevin said softly. The end of the message mentions children, and something about remembering them if no one can save them. Lisa closed her eyes, trying to imagine what it must have been like for whoever sent this message, facing the death of their entire world, knowing that help was impossibly far away, but still trying anyway. Still hoping that someone might hear their call. We need to report this to Earth immediately, Ryan said. What will they do? Lisa asked. Even if we wanted to help, how could we? It would take thousands of years to reach them with our fastest ships. I don't know, Ryan admitted. But we have to try something. We can't just ignore this. Dr. Murphy was still studying his translations. There's one more thing. They mentioned that they've sent multiple messages over the centuries. This might not be the first distress call they've sent. You mean they've been calling for help for hundreds of years and no one has answered? It looks that way. Lisa looked at the signal again, still faithfully transmitting across the vast emptiness of space. 1,200 years ago, an alien civilization had looked up at their dying sun and decided to send a message to the stars. They had poured their energy, their hope, and their desperation into that signal, never knowing if anyone would ever receive it. Now, after traveling across the galaxy for over a millennium, their call for help had finally reached someone who could understand it. The question was, what would humanity do about it? Send the data to Earth, Lisa said finally. All of it. Let them decide what comes next. As Ryan began preparing the transmission to Earth Command, Lisa kept watching the alien signal. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, an entire species was waiting for an answer to their desperate plea. They had sent a message into the void. Humans had heard it. Now came the hard part. The emergency session of the United Earth Council began at dawn in Geneva. Representatives from every nation and colony had gathered, either in person or through holographic links from across the solar system. The mood in the great assembly hall was tense and uncertain. Admiral Jack Harrison stood at the central podium, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. Behind him, massive screens displayed the alien signal data that had arrived from the Jupiter station just 6 hours earlier. Every person in the room had read the preliminary reports, but seeing the actual transmission patterns made it feel more real. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Harrison began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. What we're looking at is the first confirmed message from an intelligent alien species. After decades of searching the stars, we finally have proof that we are not alone in the universe. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. President Maria Santos, who chaired the council, called for order. Admiral Harrison continued. However, this is not the peaceful first contact scenario we always hoped for. This is a distress call. According to our translation teams, an entire civilization is facing extinction and they're asking for help. Director Helen Carter of the Earth Science Division stood up. Admiral, what exactly are they asking us to do? The message is somewhat unclear, but it appears they want someone to rescue their population before their sun destroys their world. The hall erupted in shocked conversation. Several representatives began speaking at once, their voices mixing into an incomprehensible noise. President Santos banged her gavel repeatedly until order was restored. Admiral Harrison, she said, please explain to the council why this is impossible. The Admiral activated a star chart showing the distance. Between Earth and the Kepler 442 system, the aliens are located over 1,200 light-years from Earth. With our fastest ships using maximum warp drive, the journey would take approximately 2,000 years each way. Dr. Helen Carter raised her hand. That assumes our current technology. What about the experimental quantum drive systems being developed at Lunar Research Station? All eyes turned to Dr. Sam Peterson, who had been sitting quietly in the scientists section. He was a thin man with wild gray hair and thick glasses, known throughout the solar system for his work on theoretical physics. Dr. Peterson, President, Santos called. Would you please address the council? Sam Peterson stood slowly, adjusting his glasses. The quantum tunnel drive is still highly experimental. We've had some success with small-scale tests, but nothing like what would be needed for interstellar travel. But is it theoretically possible? Director Carter pressed. Theoretically, yes. If we could create stable quantum tunnels through folded space-time, we might be able to reduce the travel time significantly. Instead of thousands of years, we might be able to make the journey in decades. Decades? Admiral Harrison looked skeptical. Even if your experimental drive worked perfectly, we're talking about a round trip that could take 50 to 60 years, and that's assuming nothing goes wrong. Captain Alex Rodriguez had been listening from the military section. He was a veteran of the Mars colonial wars, known for leading successful missions against impossible odds. Now he stood and requested, "Permission to speak." Captain Rodriguez, President Santos acknowledged. With respect to the Admiral, we've faced impossible missions before. When the Mars colonies were under attack, everyone said it was impossible to get relief supplies through the blockade. We did it anyway. That was a 6-month journey through the inner solar system. Admiral Harrison replied sharply. This would be the longest voyage in human history to a place we've never been, to help people we've never met. People who are going to die if we don't try, Rodriguez shot back. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives argued that humanity couldn't afford to waste resources on such a dangerous mission. Others insisted that refusing to help would be morally wrong. The economic costs alone would be staggering. Building a ship capable of interstellar rescue would require the combined resources of multiple nations. Dr. Peterson provided more details about the quantum drive technology. The theoretical framework is sound, he explained, but we've only tested it on unmanned probes over short distances. A full-scale interstellar mission would require us to build technology we've never built before, using principles we don't fully understand. What are the risks? President Santos asked. Complete mission failure. The ship could be destroyed during quantum tunnel formation. The crew could be lost in folded space. Even if everything goes perfectly, the time dilation effects mean that decades will pass on Earth during the mission. Representative Chang from the Asian Federation raised a practical concern. Even if we could reach them, how would we evacuate an entire alien civilization? We don't know how many of them there are, or what they need to survive. The initial translation suggests their population is in the hundreds of thousands, Director Carter replied. But we don't know their biological requirements. Admiral Harrison presented the military perspective. This mission would require our most advanced ship, our best crew, and resources that could be used to defend humanity here in our own solar system. We're being asked to risk everything for aliens we've never met. Captain Rodriguez stood again. Admiral, with respect, isn't this exactly what makes us human? The willingness to help others even when it's dangerous, even when it costs us something? Pretty words, Captain, but pretty words don't bring back crews that are lost in deep space. The debate grew heated. Some representatives accused others of cowardice. Others complained about reckless idealism. Through it all, the alien signal continued transmitting. From the Jupiter station, its desperate plea echoing across the solar system. Finally, President Santos called for a brief recess. The representatives broke into smaller groups, discussing the issue in hushed tones. The weight of the decision was enormous. Whatever they chose would define humanity's first response to contact with alien intelligence. When the session resumed, Dr. Lisa Martinez had arrived from the Jupiter station. She spoke about receiving the signal, about the mathematical beauty of the alien message, and about the clear desperation in their final transmissions. They've been sending this message for over 1,000 years, she told the assembly. They never gave up hope that someone would hear them. Someone would care enough to try. Representative Williams from the African Union asked the question everyone was thinking. Dr. Martinez, In your professional opinion, is there any chance this mission could succeed? Lisa looked around the hall, seeing the faces of humanity's leaders all focused on her answer. I don't know, she said honestly. The distances are incredible, the technology is untested. Everything about this mission is unprecedented. She paused, then continued. But I do know this. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization is facing extinction. They looked up at the stars and asked for help. If we turn away now, if we decide that it's too hard or too dangerous, then we're telling the universe that human compassion has limits. The final vote was closer than anyone expected. In the end, it came down to President Santos casting the deciding vote. She stood before the assembly, the weight of history on her shoulders. We have always defined ourselves by our willingness to help others. From our earliest days, humans have risked everything to save strangers. Today, we face that choice on a galactic scale. I vote yes. We will attempt the rescue mission. The hall erupted in both cheers and protests. But the decision was made. Humanity would build an impossible ship using untested technology to attempt the longest rescue mission in history. Captain Rodriguez volunteered to lead the mission that same day. Dr. Peterson began planning the quantum drive systems. Director Carter started organizing the largest scientific project humanity had ever undertaken. The aliens had sent a message into the void asking for help. Humans had heard it and decided to answer. The Titan shipyards had never seen anything like it. 18 months after the Earth Council's decision, the orbital construction facility buzzed with activity around the clock. The UES horizon was taking shape, unlike any ship humanity had ever built. Captain Alex Rodriguez floated in the zero gravity of the construction bay, watching teams of engineers install the experimental quantum drive core. The device was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A sphere of exotic matter suspended in a web of energy fields, humming with barely contained power. It still looks like something that shouldn't exist, said Tony Williams, the ship's chief engineer. He was a stocky man from Texas who had built engines for everything from Mars cargo haulers to deep space explorers, but nothing had prepared him for this. Dr. Peterson says it works by folding space-time, Rodriguez replied, studying the technical displays. I don't pretend to understand how. Neither do I, and I'm the one who has to keep it running. Tony shook his head. We're basically strapping ourselves to a controlled black hole and hoping it takes us to the right place. Dr. Amanda Scott joined them, carrying a tablet full of medical data. As the ship's chief medical officer, she had been studying everything known about the aliens they were trying to rescue. The latest translations from their signals give us more information about their biology, she said. They appear to be aquatic, similar to our dolphins, but with advanced technology. Any idea how many will need to evacuate? Rodriguez asked. The numbers keep changing. Their most recent transmission mentioned about 800,000 survivors, but that was sent months ago. By the time we reach them, she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew the alien situation was getting worse. Each new message from the Kepler 442 system brought more desperate news. Their sun was expanding faster than predicted, and their evacuation efforts to other planets in their system had failed. Jake Miller, the navigation specialist, approached the group. He was young but brilliant, one of the few people who fully understood the mathematics of quantum tunnel navigation. Captain, we've completed another test run of the drive system. We successfully jumped 50 light-years in 12 minutes. Rodriguez felt his excitement rise. That's incredible. At that rate, we could reach the aliens in just a few years. There's a problem, though, Jake continued. The time dilation effects are worse than we thought. Those 12 minutes felt like 12 minutes to us. But the monitoring stations recorded us as being gone for 6 hours. Dr. Scott frowned. What does that mean for the crew? It means time passes differently inside a quantum tunnel. We might experience the journey as lasting a few years, but decades could pass in normal space. This was troubling news, but not unexpected. The quantum drive was based on theories that pushed the limits of human understanding. Side effects were inevitable. Sarah Johnson, the quantum drive technician, had been monitoring the test results. She was one of Dr. Peterson's former students, brilliant but sometimes reckless with experimental technology. The good news is that the drive appears stable, she reported. We can create tunnels up to 100 light-years long without major power fluctuations. And the bad news? Tony asked. We'll need to make multiple jumps to reach the alien system. Each jump puts stress on the drive core, and we don't know how many jumps it can handle before breaking down. Captain Rodriguez gathered his senior staff for a mission briefing. The crew of the Horizon had been carefully selected from volunteers across the solar system. Every person knew they might not return home for decades, if at all. The mission. Parameters are simple, Rodriguez began. Jump to the Kepler 442 system, evacuate as many aliens as possible, and bring them to safety. The reality, of course, is much more complicated. He activated a holographic display showing their planned route. We'll make the journey in stages, jumping approximately 70 light-years at a time. Each jump requires several hours to recharge. The quantum drive, giving us time to check our position and make course corrections. Dr. Scott raised a concern. Captain, we still don't know how to keep the aliens alive during the return journey. Our ship is designed for a crew of 200, not hundreds of thousands of refugees. Dr. Peterson's team has a theoretical solution, Rodriguez replied. They believe we can use the quantum drive to create temporary habitat spaces, essentially, pocket dimensions where we can house the aliens during transport. Tony looked skeptical. Theoretical being the key word. We're betting everything on technology that exists only on paper. It's not just on paper anymore, Sarah interjected. We've successfully created small pocket dimensions during our tests. They can hold about a cubic meter of space for several hours. Several hours isn't long enough for an interstellar journey, Jake pointed out. That's why we need to scale it up. If we can create larger, more stable pocket dimensions, we could transport thousands of aliens in spaces that are bigger on the inside than the outside. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the Jupiter communication station. Dr. Lisa Martinez appeared on the communication screen, her expression grave. Captain Rodriguez, we've received another transmission from the alien system. The situation is worse than we thought. The new message was heartbreaking. The alien star had begun showing signs of instability much faster than their scientists had predicted. Solar flares were destroying their remaining orbital habitats and their population was dropping rapidly. How many survivors are left? Rodriguez asked. Based on our translation, maybe 300,000. And that number is falling every day. The weight of the situation settled over the crew. They were humanity's only hope of saving an entire alien civilization, and time was running out faster than anyone had expected. How long until we're ready to depart? Rodriguez asked his chief engineer. Tony checked his construction schedules. We need at least 2 more months to finish the drive installation and run safety tests. We don't have 2 months. These people are dying right now. Captain, if we launch before the drive is properly tested, we might not make it out of the solar system. Rodriguez faced an impossible choice. Launch too early and risk the mission failing completely. Wait too long and arrive to find only empty space where an alien civilization used to exist. We launch in 3 weeks, he decided. Whatever isn't ready, we'll have to figure out during the journey. The final weeks of preparation were frantic. Engineers worked around the clock to complete critical systems. The crew ran simulation after simulation, preparing for every scenario they could imagine. Dr. Peterson arrived from Luna Station for the final systems check. His experimental quantum drive was humanity's greatest technological achievement and its most dangerous gamble rolled into one. Are you sure this will work? Rodriguez asked during their private meeting. Peterson adjusted his glasses and looked thoughtful. Captain, I'm sure the mathematics are correct. I'm sure we've built the drive according to specifications. But am I sure it will work perfectly during a 1,200 light-year journey to save an alien civilization? No one could be sure of that. But you think we have a chance? I think we have the best chance we're going to get. And sometimes that's enough. 3 weeks later, the UES Horizon undocked from Titan shipyards. The ship was as ready as human. Technology could make it. The crew was as prepared as training could prepare them. As they moved away from Saturn toward the edge of the solar system, Captain Rodriguez looked back at Earth through the viewports. It was just a tiny blue dot in the darkness, but it represented everything humanity had achieved. Soon they would activate the quantum drive for the first time at full power. They would fold space and time, jumping across distances that had once seemed impossible. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before, to save people they had never met, using technology they didn't fully understand. It was the most human thing they could possibly do. The first quantum jump changed everything Captain Rodriguez thought he knew about space travel. One moment, the UES horizon was drifting at the edge of the solar system, surrounded by familiar stars. The next moment, reality seemed to fold in, on itself. Quantum tunnel forming, Sarah Johnson announced from her station. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as exotic energy patterns danced around the ship. Drive core stable. Tunnel entrance in 10 seconds. Rodriguez gripped his command chair as the universe twisted around them. Through the viewports, stars stretched into lines of light, then vanished entirely. They were inside the tunnel now, traveling through folded space at impossible speeds. "How long until we reach the exit point?" Rodriguez asked. 14 minutes, Jake Miller replied from navigation. "We should emerge about 70 light years from our starting position." Those 14 minutes felt like hours. The ship shuddered and groaned as it moved through dimensions that human minds weren't designed to understand. Several crew members became nauseous, and Dr. Amanda Scott had to treat 2 cases of severe disorientation. When they finally emerged from the tunnel, everyone rushed to the viewports to see where they had ended up. The stars were different now, arranged in patterns no human had ever seen before. They had traveled further from Earth than anyone in history. "Position confirmed," Jake announced. "We've jumped 68 light years. Navigation error of less than 2 light years. The drive performed better than expected." Tony Williams was already checking the engine systems. "Drive core temperature is elevated but within acceptable limits. We'll need about 4 hours for it to cool down before the next jump." Those 4 hours gave them time to analyze their new environment and plan the next stage of their journey. They were no longer in Earth's local stellar neighborhood. If something went wrong now, rescue would be impossible. Dr. Scott used the time to review their medical supplies and life support systems. "We're doing well so far," she reported. "No serious injuries from the jump, though some crew members are still experiencing mild temporal disorientation." "Temporal disorientation?" Rodriguez asked. "Their internal clocks are confused. The quantum tunnel apparently affects human perception of time. It's nothing serious, but it's something to monitor." The second jump went more smoothly. The crew was better prepared for the strange sensation of folded space travel. They emerged 71 light years further from Earth, now over 140 light years from home. It was during the third jump that they encountered their first major problem. "Captain, we're picking up some kind of gravitational anomaly ahead," Jake reported as they prepared for the jump. "It's not showing up on our star charts." Sarah studied the quantum drive readings. "The anomaly is interfering with tunnel formation. I'm getting unstable energy patterns in the drive core." "What kind of anomaly?" Rodriguez asked. "Unknown. It's big, whatever it is. Mass equivalent to several solar systems, but we can't see anything there." They were facing their first encounter with dark matter, the invisible substance that made up most of the universe but remained nearly undetectable. The gravitational effects were playing havoc with their quantum drive, making it impossible to form stable tunnels. "Can we go around it?" Rodriguez asked. Jake checked his navigation charts. "We could, but it would add several jumps to our journey. Based on the aliens' most recent transmissions, I don't think they have that much time." Tony was studying the drive specifications. "What if we use the anomaly to our advantage? If we can calculate the gravitational effects precisely, we might be able to use them to slingshot toward our destination." Sarah looked doubtful. "That's incredibly dangerous. We'd be using an invisible gravitational field to launch ourselves across space using a drive system we don't fully understand." "Everything about this mission is dangerous," Rodriguez pointed out. "The question is whether the risk is worth taking." They spent hours running calculations and simulations. The plan was crazy but mathematically sound. By timing their quantum jump to coincide with the gravitational slingshot effect, they could potentially jump over 200 light-years in a single leap. If it works, we'll cut weeks off our journey time, Jake explained. If it fails, we could be thrown off course by thousands of light-years or torn apart by gravitational forces. Rodriguez made the decision. We try it. These aliens are running out of time, and so are we. The slingshot jump was unlike anything they had experienced before. As they approached the invisible dark matter concentration, the ship began experiencing strange gravitational effects. Crew members felt alternately heavy and weightless as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate. Drive core charging, Sarah announced. Tunnel formation in 60 seconds. Gravitational slingshot window opens in 45 seconds. The timing had to be perfect. Too early and they would miss the gravitational boost. Too late and the dark matter field would tear their quantum tunnel apart. Tunnel forming now, Sarah called out. Gravitational boost in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship lurched forward as if grabbed by an invisible giant's hand. The quantum tunnel twisted and stretched as gravitational forces pulled at it from all directions. For a terrifying moment, Rodriguez thought the tunnel would collapse and leave them stranded in folded space forever. Then suddenly they were through, emerging into normal space with enough velocity to make the ship's inertial dampeners scream in protest. Position check, Rodriguez ordered as soon as the ship stabilized. Jake worked frantically at his navigation console. We're over 250 light-years from our starting position. We actually overshot our target. The crew cheered despite their exhaustion. They had successfully used an invisible gravitational field to catapult themselves across a quarter of the galaxy. It was a feat that would have been impossible just months earlier. More importantly, they were now receiving stronger transmissions from the alien system. The signals were clearer, more detailed, and more desperate than ever before. Dr. Kevin Murphy, who had remained on Earth to coordinate the translation efforts, sent them regular updates via quantum communication. The aliens have confirmed contact, one of his messages revealed. They know someone is coming to help them. They're calling it the most hopeful event in their species' history. The aliens had a name for themselves, the Zelani. They were indeed aquatic, living in vast underwater cities on their ocean world. Their technology was sophisticated but focused on harmony with their environment rather than conquest or expansion. They're artists, Murphy explained in another transmission. Their entire civilization is built around creating beauty and understanding the universe through art and philosophy. They never developed weapons of war because they never needed them. This made their situation even more tragic. The Zelani had no military tradition, no experience with evacuation on a massive scale, no backup plans for planetary destruction. When their sun began dying unexpectedly, they had done the only thing they could think of: ask the universe for help. As the horizon continued its journey through the darkness between stars, Captain Rodriguez found himself thinking about the beings they were trying to save. An entire civilization of artists and philosophers, facing extinction through no fault of their own. The ship made 2 more successful jumps, bringing them within 500 light-years of their destination. The quantum drive was performing beyond all expectations, and the crew had adapted well to the strange effects of folded space travel. But with each jump, the urgency grew stronger. The Zelani transmissions were becoming more desperate. Their star was expanding faster than their scientists had predicted, and their orbital habitats were failing one by one. Latest population estimate is down to 300,000, Dr. Scott reported during a senior staff meeting. They're losing about 10,000 people every few weeks. Can we go faster? Rodriguez asked Sarah. We're already pushing the drive beyond safe limits. Any faster, and we risk a catastrophic failure that would strand us in folded space. Rodriguez looked around at his crew. They had already traveled further from Earth than any humans in history. They were using untested technology to attempt an impossible rescue mission. Every day brought new challenges and new risks, but they also knew that somewhere ahead of them, 300,000 beings were looking up at their dying star and hoping that help was coming. The Zelani had sent their message into the void 1,200 years ago, never knowing if anyone would answer. Now, finally, someone had heard their call. The UES Horizon continued its journey through the darkness, carrying humanity's promise that no cry for help would go unanswered, no matter how far away or how impossible the odds. The Kepler 442 system was nothing like what Captain Rodriguez had expected. As the UES Horizon dropped out of its final quantum tunnel, the crew stared in shock at the scene before them. The Zelani star blazed angry red across the viewports, nearly twice the size it should have been. Solar flares reached out like grasping fingers, some extending millions of miles into space. The system's inner planets had already been consumed, leaving only cooling debris in their wake. "My God," whispered Dr. Amanda Scott, staring at the destruction. "We're almost too late." Jake Miller was busy taking readings from his navigation station. "The outer planets are still intact, but barely. The radiation levels are off the charts. Any unshielded life in this system should already be dead." "Then where are the Zelani?" Rodriguez asked. Sarah Johnson had been monitoring communications frequencies. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple signals. Weak, but definitely artificial. They're coming from everywhere. Asteroid belts, planetary moons, even what looks like artificial structures floating in deep space." The truth became clear as they moved deeper into the system. The Zelani hadn't evacuated to other planets because there were no safe planets left. Instead, they had built emergency habitats wherever they could, on asteroids, inside moons, and makeshift space stations cobbled together from whatever materials they could find. "It's incredible," Tony Williams said, studying the engineering readings. "They've scattered their entire civilization across hundreds of small habitats. Each one is heavily shielded and powered by fusion reactors." Dr. Scott was analyzing the biological data coming from the habitats. "The Zelani are definitely aquatic. Each habitat contains thousands of gallons of their native water, maintained at specific temperature and chemical levels. They've essentially created portable oceans." The first direct communication with the Zelani came 3 hours after the Horizon's arrival. The translation equipment struggled with the complex alien language, but the emotion behind the words was unmistakable. "Welcome, children of distant stars," the message began. "We have waited so long for this moment. We are Veltar, coordinator of the refuge habitats. We greet you with joy and gratitude beyond expression." Captain Rodriguez recorded a response, hoping the translation software would convey his meaning properly. "Veltar, this is Captain Alex Rodriguez of the Earthship Horizon. We received your distress signal and have come to help evacuate your people." The reply came quickly. "Captain Rodriguez, we have 287,000 survivors in 143 separate habitats. Our star grows more unstable each day. How much time do we have?" Rodriguez looked at his science officer for an answer. Dr. Scott had been studying the star's behavior since their arrival. "Based on the expansion rate and flare activity, I estimate we have maybe 2 weeks before the radiation becomes lethal, even to their shielded habitats. 2 weeks to evacuate nearly 300,000 beings from over 100 different locations, using a ship designed for a crew of 200. It was impossible, unless they tried something that had never been attempted before." "Sarah, is the pocket dimension technology ready for testing?" Rodriguez asked. Sarah Johnson looked nervous. "We've run simulations, but nothing on this scale. The theory is sound. We use the quantum drive to create folded space bubbles that can hold large volumes inside a small physical area." "How large?" "Theoretically, each bubble could hold the equivalent of a city block, compressed into a space the size of a cargo container. But Captain, if the containment field fails while people are inside..." She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the risks. If the pocket dimensions collapsed during the journey home, hundreds of thousands of aliens would simply cease to exist. Tony was studying the technical specifications. "We'd need to modify the cargo bays to handle the dimensional anchoring equipment. That's at least a week of work, maybe more." "We don't have a week," Rodriguez said firmly. "We modify what we can and make do with what we have. Start with the largest cargo bay." While the engineers worked frantically to prepare the pocket dimension systems, Dr. Scott began planning the evacuation procedures. The Zilani biology was completely different from human biology, but they had similar needs for shelter, food, and safety. Each Zilani weighs about 40 pounds and requires approximately 50 gallons of specially treated water, she explained to the senior staff. They breathe through gill slits and can survive in lower oxygen environments than humans. How do they handle artificial gravity? Jake asked. They prefer low gravity, similar to underwater conditions. Too much gravitational force damages their internal organs. The evacuation began 5 days after the Horizon's arrival in the system. The first test of the pocket dimension technology was both terrifying and amazing. A space the size of a football field was compressed into a container barely larger than a refrigerator. Dimensional field is stable, Sarah reported as they loaded the first group of Zilani refugees. Internal environment is maintaining proper pressure and chemical balance. The Zilani themselves were unlike anything the human crew had ever seen. They were graceful beings, somewhat resembling large dolphins but with 4 manipulator arms and complex vocal organs that allowed them to speak both in water and in air. Their skin changed colors to express emotions, creating beautiful patterns that rippled across their bodies. Elder Corthes was the first Zilani to board the Horizon in person. She was ancient by their standards, her skin bearing intricate natural patterns that marked her as a keeper of their cultural history. Captain Rodriguez, she said through the translation device, her skin glowing with warm golden patterns. 2 sea beings from another star. To know that our message reached someone who cared enough to answer, this gives meaning to our 1,000 years of suffering. Elder Corthes, we're honored to help, but we need your people to trust us with technology they've never seen before. These pocket dimensions will keep them safe during the journey, but they must have faith. Captain, we have already placed our faith in you by sending our message to the stars. We will trust you with our lives. The evacuation process was complex and dangerous. Each habitat had to be approached carefully. Its population transferred to the Horizon through specially designed connection tubes. The Zilani were remarkably cooperative, organizing themselves efficiently despite their fear and grief at leaving their dying system forever. Young Zilna, a Zilani engineer who had helped design many of their emergency habitats, worked closely with Tony Williams to optimize the evacuation procedures. Despite the language barrier, the 2 engineers understood each other through the universal language of technology and problem-solving. Your ship is marvelous, Zilna communicated through rapid color changes and translated speech. The quantum drive technology, we theorized such things were possible, but never attempted to build them. Maybe when this is over, our people can share knowledge, Tony replied. Learn from each other. As the days passed, more Zilani were loaded into the pocket dimensions. Each successful transfer was a small victory, but the star was becoming increasingly unstable. Solar flares were growing, stronger and more frequent, forcing them to evacuate the nearest habitats first. On the 8th day, disaster struck. A massive solar flare erupted just as they were approaching one of the larger refugee habitats. The radiation surge overwhelmed the habitat's shields, and 30,000 Zilani died in seconds. The crew of the Horizon watched in horror as the habitat's lights went out, its fusion reactors failing under the electromagnetic assault. They had arrived just minutes too late to save those people. Captain, Veltar's voice came over the communication system, heavy with grief. We have lost the 7th water city. Those were our finest artists and historians. 1,000 years of cultural knowledge. Gone. Rodriguez felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. 30,000 beings dead because they hadn't moved fast enough. Veltar, I'm so sorry. We'll move faster. We'll save the others. Captain, you have already saved more of us than we dared to hope. Do not burden yourself with the weight of those we cannot save. But Rodriguez did feel that weight. Every hour of delay meant more Zilani would die. They worked around the clock, pushing the pocket dimension technology to its limits. Dr. Scott treated crew members for exhaustion while they continued the evacuation. By the 12th day, they had evacuated over 200,000 Zilani, from 96 different habitats. The ship's cargo bays were filled with pocket dimensions containing entire communities of refugees. The quantum drive was straining under the load, its power output fluctuating dangerously. That's when the star began its final collapse. "Captain," Sarah called out from her station. "The star is showing signs of imminent collapse. We're seeing massive gravitational fluctuations. If it goes nova, how long do we have? Maybe hours, maybe less." They still had 60,000 Zilani in the remaining habitats. Rodriguez faced the hardest decision of his life. Leave now and save the 200,000 they had already rescued, or stay and risk losing everyone. Elder Cortez made the decision for him. "Captain Rodriguez," her voice came over the ship's communication system. "You must leave now. Take those you have saved and go. The remaining habitats. We have already accepted our fate." The journey home was unlike anything Captain Rodriguez had expected. The UES horizon carried not just refugees, but an entire civilization compressed into pocket dimensions within its cargo holds. The ship had become an ark carrying the hopes and dreams of an ancient species across the vast emptiness of space. The first few weeks were the hardest. The quantum drive, overloaded with the massive pocket dimensions and their contents, could only manage shorter jumps. What should have been a journey of months stretched into years. But those years became an unexpected gift. Dr. Amanda Scott worked closely with Zilani biotechnicians to ensure the health of the refugees. The pocket dimensions maintained perfect environmental conditions, but the psychological stress of being trapped in compressed space was enormous. Many Zilani suffered from what humans would call claustrophobia, despite their small physical forms. "We need to give them hope," Dr. Scott reported during a senior staff meeting 6 months into the journey. "They need to know this isn't permanent, that they'll have real homes again." Elder Cortez, who spent much of her time outside the pocket dimensions consulting with the human crew, had an idea. "Captain Rodriguez, our people need purpose. In our culture, meaningful work is essential for mental health. Perhaps some of our engineers could assist your crew?" This suggestion led to an unprecedented exchange of knowledge between the two species. Zilna, the young Zilani engineer, began working directly with Tony Williams on improving the ship's life support systems. Despite the language barriers and vast differences in their biology, they found common ground in their shared love of solving technical problems. "The Zilani understand energy systems in ways we never considered," Tony explained to Rodriguez. "They think about technology as part of a living ecosystem rather than just machines. They've taught us how to make our systems more efficient by working with natural processes instead of against them." The Zilani had insights about biotechnology that amazed the human crew. They had developed methods of growing organic components that could interface directly with electronic systems. Their approach to medicine focused on supporting the body's natural healing processes rather than fighting diseases with harsh chemicals. In return, humans shared their knowledge of quantum physics, space travel, and engineering. The Zilani were fascinated by human concepts of exploration and discovery. Their own species had developed space travel reluctantly, only when forced to flee their dying system. "Humans are natural explorers," Veltar observed during one of their regular communication sessions. "You left your homeworld not because you had to, but because you wanted to see what was beyond the horizon. This is a remarkable trait." Dr. Scott found herself learning as much as teaching. "The Zilani approach to psychology is completely different from ours," she explained to Rodriguez. "They see individual mental health as inseparable from community health. When one Zilani suffers, the entire group works to help them heal." The months turned into years, something unexpected happened. The ship began to feel less like a refugee transport and more like a thriving community. Humans and Zilani worked together on daily problems, shared meals, when possible, given their different biologies, and began to form genuine friendships across species barriers. Jake Miller spent hours learning Zilani mathematics, which approached complex calculations through artistic patterns rather than pure numerical analysis. They solved navigation problems by creating beautiful geometric designs, he explained to anyone who would listen. "It's like turning space travel into poetry." Sarah Johnson worked with Zilani quantum theorists to improve the stability of the pocket dimensions. The aliens had theoretical knowledge that complemented human practical engineering in remarkable ways. Together, they developed new techniques that made the dimensional fields more stable and comfortable for the refugees. "We're not just carrying passengers anymore," Rodriguez observed to his senior staff during their second year of travel. "We're carrying partners, colleagues, friends." The most remarkable development came when the Zilani began sharing their art. Their culture had always emphasized creative expression as the highest form of intelligence. Even while trapped in pocket dimensions fleeing their dying world, they continued to create. Zilani artists produced flowing sculptures of light and sound that could exist in both air and water. Their musicians composed songs that incorporated mathematical harmonies based on quantum frequencies. Their poets created works that changed meaning depending on the reader's emotional state. "It's beautiful beyond words," Dr. Scott said after experiencing a Zilani art installation that had been carefully adapted for human senses. "They've turned survival into an act of creation." Elder Cortez spent much of her time recording the oral history of her people, working with human linguists to preserve Zilani culture in formats that could survive even if their species didn't. But as the journey progressed, survival seemed more and more certain. "Your species has given us more than rescue," she told Rodriguez during one of their conversations. "You have given us hope for the future. Not just survival, but growth, change, new possibilities we never imagined." The question of where the Zilani would settle had been discussed since the beginning of the journey. Earth's oceans were too different chemically to support Zilani life directly. Mars had no oceans at all. But as they approached the solar system, a perfect solution became obvious. Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, had vast oceans beneath its frozen surface. The water was similar enough to the Zilani homeworld to support life with minimal modifications. Better yet, the moon was largely uninhabited except for a few human research stations. "It's perfect," Zilna said when they showed her the orbital images of Europa. Her skin patterns shifted to colors that the humans had learned indicated excitement and gratitude. "Water worlds under ice. We can build new cities there. Better cities using everything we've learned." The arrival at Earth was a moment that none of the crew would ever forget. After more than 3 years of travel, the familiar blue and white marble of humanity's homeworld appeared on their viewports, but they were no longer the same people who had left on this impossible mission. Captain Rodriguez had aged visibly during the journey, his hair now streaked with gray. But his eyes showed a satisfaction that came from accomplishing something truly meaningful. His crew had become the first humans to save an alien civilization, but more than that, they had become bridges between two species. The Earth Council had prepared extensively for the Zilani arrival. Europa had been designated as a new colony, world, with human engineers working around the clock to prepare initial settlements beneath the ice. The plan was to establish temporary communities while the Zilani and humans worked together to build permanent cities. Elder Cortez was among the first to be released from the pocket dimensions when they reached Europa orbit. She floated in, the specially designed habitat aboard the ship, her ancient eyes looking out at her new world through the viewports. "Captain Rodriguez," she said, her voice carrying a weight of history and gratitude. "Our people have a saying, the greatest gift is not what you give but what you choose to risk in the giving. You risked everything for strangers. This is why your species will be remembered across the galaxy." The settlement of Europa proceeded smoothly over the following months. Human and Zilani engineers worked together to establish underwater cities that incorporated the best of both technologies. The Zilani brought their knowledge of biological systems and environmental harmony. Humans contributed their expertise in construction, power generation, and space-based logistics. But the most important outcome of the mission was revealed 5 years later, when Captain Rodriguez was preparing for humanity's second interstellar rescue mission. The Jupiter Communications Station had detected another distress call, this time from a silicon-based species whose planet was experiencing catastrophic geological instability. "It seems word is getting out," Dr. Lisa Martinez told Rodriguez during their mission briefing. "We're starting to receive signals from multiple alien civilizations. Some are distress calls, but others are messages of greeting and offers of cooperation. The Zilani have been broadcasting their story across the galaxy, Rodriguez explained. They're telling everyone they encounter about the species that heard a call for help and decided to answer. Earth had become known throughout the local region of the galaxy as the home of the species that would risk everything to save strangers. Ships from other worlds had begun making peaceful contact, drawn by stories of human compassion and ingenuity. The rescue of the Zilani had started as an impossible mission to save one alien civilization. It had become the foundation of Earth's role in a larger galactic community built on mutual aid and cooperation. Dr. Lisa Martinez still worked the night shift at the Jupiter Communications Station, but her job had changed dramatically. Instead of listening to empty space, she now coordinated a network of interstellar communications that spanned hundreds of light years. Every night, I received messages from dozens of different species, she told visitors to the station. Trade, proposals, scientific discoveries, cultural exchanges, and yes, occasional calls for help. The universe turned out to